The Gulf Cooperation Council is a regional union of all the Gulf states, except Iraq and Yemen. In a surprise move, the GCC initiated a severe economic and diplomatic blockade after Qatar refused to submit to an extensive list of demands that would, in effect, end its sovereignty. The GCC claimed that Qatar was funding terrorism, and most significantly demanded that it end all diplomatic relations with Iran.
Saudi Arabia rules the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC, but not all the countries in there go along with Saudi Arabia all the time. They tend to because Saudi is the big bully on the block. Saudi Arabia, with the new crown prince, did a ridiculous move, which was to give an ultimatum to one of its own members, Qatar, and say, here's 13 things you must do, and otherwise we are going to boycott you.
Saudi Arabia and UAE attempted to embargo Qatar and basically force them under the boot of the most dominant countries in the Gulf Cooperation Council in order to basically rampage through the region. Because Qatar had a somewhat independent foreign policy, they were keeping ties with Iran, they were maintaining some relations with Hezbollah. Also, the Muslim Brotherhood is a huge threat to Saudi Arabia and the UAE because they represent a republican system. They want to use democracy to achieve their goals, as Erdogan did in Turkey, and that threatens the monarchic model that the UAE and Saudi Arabia embrace.
By boycotting Qatar, what did the Saudis and the other GCC countries accomplish? They pushed Qatar closer to Iran, because Iran said, oh, well, we'll help supply you with the goods you need that you can't get otherwise. So that backfired.
Qatar is surrounded by two very, very powerful neighbors, by Saudi Arabia on the one hand and Iran on the other hand. So what Qatar has to do in order to survive is to placate both. It's got to balance one off against the other. Qatar, for example, shares the world's largest underwater natural gas field with Iran. It's got to be peaceful with Iran. It's got to make sure that Iran and Qatar do not get into conflicts on other issues.
Any country in the Persian Gulf that wants to have a neutral policy in this new Saudi Arabia-Iran battle is considered by Saudi Arabia to be an enemy. That means an enemy of the United States. So in the end, what it means is that countries in that region that are looking for conciliation have turned themselves into enemies of the United States. And that makes the United States an enemy of conciliation and stability, the exact conciliation and stability that really should be what we're seeking in that part of the world.
The Crown Prince got another brilliant idea, which was to bring Said Hariri from Lebanon to Saudi Arabia, and he announced his resignation, to the consternation of the people of Lebanon and the rest of the world. Why would you go to another country to announce you're going to resign? And then went back to Lebanon and said, oh, I'm not really going to resign. Now, what was that all about? So behind that was Saudi Arabia did not like that Said Hariri was in a government that included Hezbollah.
Prime Minister of Lebanon announces he's resigning. And who do they blame? Saudis. Quote, Hezbollah has declared war against Saudi Arabia, which they never did.
Hezbollah has been in governments for years. They are now a legitimate political party that has a military wing. The Saudis do not like Hezbollah. Hezbollah is friends with Iran. And so the Crown Prince thought he could do a quick jujitsu, get at Iran through Hezbollah by forcing a crisis within Lebanon and kicking Hezbollah out of the government. It did not work at all.
Mohammed bin Salman and his partners in the UAE see Lebanon as a base of influence for Iran because of President Michel Aoun, who's actually a Christian, and his alliance with Hezbollah. MBS essentially kidnapped Prime Minister Saad Hariri, who has traditionally represented the Future Party, which is a sort of proxy of Saudi Arabia, and Hariri actually resisted the Saudi demands with the whole of Lebanese society and politics behind him. They united against MBS's plan because what MBS was seeking to do is to destabilize a very fragile order that Hezbollah has helped to construct in cooperation with Sunni groups. So basically, what they want for the region is extremely dangerous, and it doesn't take into account the particularities of different societies.